The last time I saw a Godzilla movie in theaters was not too long ago. It was the spectacular Godzilla Minus One, which is the Japanese film produced by Toho, and it really raised the bar for what a Godzilla movie can be in terms of spectacle and in terms of dramatic depth. So as you can imagine, following that up by seeing the absolutely ridiculous Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire just a couple days ago, really gave me a violent case of whiplash. Given the tone of this movie, it is so hard to believe that this series began with the relatively grounded Godzilla 2014 by Gareth Edwards. Now look, I am a massive Godzilla fan. I've seen all of the live-action Godzilla films, so I can let myself enjoy Godzilla movies of varying tones, but my personal preference is for the ones that strike a healthy balance between exciting kaiju action and a decent plot with human characters. Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire is not bothered at all with the latter. Now, I'm going to go into minor spoilers as I regale the plot to you guys, so click off if you don't want to hear it. The plot, insofar as there is one, is that Monarch, the organization that studies the Earth's kaiju, has been reading these strange signals from within Hollow Earth. It turns out that these signals are being sent telepathically by this tribe called the Iwi, which is the same tribe who the mute girl from Godzilla vs. Kong belongs to. The girl senses the distress call too, and she begs her adoptive mother, who works for Monarch, to take her down into Hollow Earth as Monarch investigates. It turns out that the Iwi wanted the girl to come down because she's prophesized to reawaken the classic Toho kaiju Mothra, who will be instrumental in getting Godzilla to cooperate with King Kong in fighting against Scar King. Scar King is basically this evil version of King Kong who is prophesized to lead a conquest of the surface world with his kaiju Shimo, basically a white quadrupedal Godzilla that spews ice instead of radiation. So that's it in a nutshell, and if it sounds like I left out a lot of the human story, that's just because there isn't much human story to leave out here. If you're one of those Godzilla fans who's constantly clamoring, get the humans off screen and get to the fucking kaiju already, then Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire is probably right up your alley. I'm just not one of those people. The human story of a Godzilla film, even if it's just serviceable, is what makes the kaiju action so satisfying when it does happen. And so to have nothing but kaiju action for the better part of 2 hours, it gets a little bit exhausting. It's also tiring because the pacing of this movie is so rapid. It just never lets up. I mean, it almost reminds me of J.J. Abrams at his worst, like The Rise of Skywalker or Star Trek Into Darkness. It just moves so fast that you have no room to breathe and no space to consider if what you've been watching makes sense and if it's even plausible. And I think that's the intention. It just very quickly dumps the next piece of plot exposition at you or the next piece of lore, and then we're off on the next monster fight. But even the monster fights really aren't anything we haven't seen before. Actually, that's not true. There is one off-the-wall moment where the kaiju are fighting in basically zero gravity, which is something I never thought I'd see. Sure, it's unique and we haven't seen it before, but here's the thing. When you do that, you take away the physical presence of these kaiju because you're taking away their sense of scale and weight. Of the two titular monsters, King Kong is the one that fares better visually, and the effects that are used to render him for the most part are quite good. But Godzilla, on the other hand, I didn't think was quite as good because there are some scenes in this movie where Godzilla looks way too lithe and agile. I prefer Godzilla to have that sense of heft and weight, and he really loses it in this movie. The monsters in general are not as impressive this time around, like Scar King and Shimo. I didn't find them all that compelling as kaiju antagonists. I thought Mechagodzilla and King Ghidorah from the previous movies felt a lot more dangerous than these two. The final battle of this movie is in Rio de Janeiro, and like the Mechagodzilla fight in Hong Kong from Godzilla vs. Kong, this movie pays no attention to the loss of human life. I mean, hundreds of thousands of Brazilians probably just died, but hey, fuck it. Is there anything I liked in this movie? Well, Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see any other Toho kaiju besides Godzilla, so seeing Mothra make another appearance was really a welcome surprise. And I dug seeing Godzilla get his pink spines. I mean, sure, it's probably just so they can make an aesthetically new Godzilla toy design, but it reminds me kind of Godzilla 2000, and as a hardcore Godzilla fan, I really enjoy those somewhat oblique references. At the end of the day, Godzilla and Kong the New Empire is what I call a completely passive movie-going experience. You just take in the constant kaiju action, it's fast, and it's sometimes mind-numbing, and then after 2 hours, you're done.